What's up, guys? This is the CJ Murray Podcast, an exploration of music philosophy from a Christian perspective. These are stories and insights to encourage and challenge our views of music, God, and who we are. Thanks for listening, and now, today's conversation. Isaiah, we've come a long way since the last time we recorded. Like the first episode I recorded, it's really funny because I had given no prep to when you first came over. I had the idea in the back of my head for like a month. And then when you were over at the house to record violin, I just handed you the mic and I said, hey, this is now a podcast. Say something.
Honestly, I forgot that we were recording. I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that
we were recording violin.
Yeah. Now I remember. Yeah.
It was violin. What was it even for?
Was that?
It was for a song that I was doing.
Yeah, for wedding. Was it that one? Oh no! It was a different one.
It was a different one.
I'm trying to remember because there was some.
It was a personal song that I was working on.
There's some rhythmic little thing that was going on that I can't remember.
It's I recorded you for a song that went through a million renditions and it's still on the docket to be released eventually. well, that's embarrassing.
To that.
Oh my word. Oh man. Okay, I think one of the best ways to start out is just walk through all the stuff you've done since in the past year and a half, because you've done a lot.
Yes. Okay. When was the last time? When was that?
Okay, so it would have been very end of 2023. November of 2023, I believe.
Okay. So what happened last year? I'm definitely drawing a blank here.
Okay, well, you did get like a concert that you split with two other people.
Yeah, so that happened at the end. So I guess leading up, obviously we had performances here with Heather Sorensen's Requiem, and I think it was earlier, before she came at my church. Joseph Martin and Heather Sorensen came for a concert. And that was when Joseph invited me to go to a composer symposium that he hosts in Austin, Texas. Every year. They've been doing that for a number of years now. Anyway, Heather Sorensen has been at one of the clinicians before, but he said that he would give me a scholarship to go there. Anyway. Then when Heather Sorensen came, I'd already met her and worked with her, so that was nice to really neat to kind of build on that connection.
Sure.
And that work is incredible. Her Requiem, that was probably one of my favorite concerts I've ever played, and I would play it again so many times. I can't get tired of that. It's just incredible. And obviously we had Sound of Music.
Yeah, you did play for Sound of Music. I
guess it would have been at the very beginning of 2024 that I was working on a piece. I think it was called Dominus Meus Constantia, which means the Lord is my constant. Why I chose Latin, I have no idea. I can't remember my reason.
It sounds classical.
Yeah.
And professional.
Yeah, I wanted it to be an older language that's not really used. That way it can't be associated with a country necessarily. But that work basically goes through the attributes of God, different attributes, and is just a reminder of how through different moments in our life, he is this for us. He remains constant. And anyway, when summer began, that was the first orchestral premiere that I conducted since some piece I did at Summer Music Academy back in 22, I believe. Yeah. Anyway, so that was a great way to get started off in the summer with that. And then right after that premiere, at my church, I went up to Texas, and so it was really neat spending, what was it? It was like 4 days at the symposium. And I had just turned 21, so I could actually legally have my own hotel room.
Oh my word. It's like, oh yeah, like the whole weekend was a huge achievement for me. Yeah. I got to premiere this and I got my own hotel room.
Yeah, no, it was
That's
great.
awesome.
It was great because like my birthday was like 7 days, a week before then.
Oh my word.
So it worked out perfectly.
That's awesome.
That I could actually do that. So it was a really unique experience because I've never been surrounded by so many, like, one, the clinicians were great. There were like 9 of them. We play a lot of them here, like Joel Rainey, Robert Sterling, Joseph Martin, Brad Nix. There's some more. And a lot of them work for publishing companies or owned publishing companies like Lorenz and Hope Publishing and Hal Leonard. So that was really neat to talk to them. And I haven't heard from composers in the field before. So really neat to discuss those kinds of things. And all of the other people that came to learn from the clinicians, it was really neat to like go out for a meal or just to talk with them about music, because surrounded by so many like-minded creative people and composers in particular, it was really interesting because we just would share so many different thoughts and go back and forth, and especially because it was the clinicians are Christian composers, and that was all of the people coming in were as well, and it was a lot of like choral. A lot of it was choral writing and arranging.
Walk me through like exactly what a symposium is. I don't think I've fully wrapped my head around it.
Okay, a symposium, I guess normally you'd think of a conference probably. Sure. So we would just meet. I'm trying to remember. We had hours of lectures. Okay. In a day. We would they would just. It's
like a collective educational gathering, but it ends in a performance.
No performances really. Okay. The only thing we had master classes. Okay. So they would have a couple, like for my master class, which was the last set of them at the very end of the week, they would have a couple of clinicians. So Robert Sterling and Joseph Martin were the clinicians to speak on my piece, which I just brought the piece that I had just premiered. Sure. And what's funny is the day before, I've been playing a piece for Joseph. It was a different piece I had written, just to get his thoughts. And he took me over to see Joel Rainey. And Joel Rainey writes like a bunch of piano arrangements, and he writes stuff for choir. And he was the pianist for Heather Sorensen's Requiem premiere at Carnegie Hall. Oh, wow. But he came over. He looks like a rock star, kind of. He's got the glasses, like the Tony Stark glasses, and then the goatee and stuff.
Classic.
Yeah. But anyway, we were just talking through some things, and he was intrigued. One, he liked my hair.
You're just gonna take that to your grave. It's like
no. Well, yeah. I don't know.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't even know what I think. Anyway, it was interesting to hear their feedback on the piece, because what I guess Joseph Martin during the masterclass had said that the piece that I showed reminded him of, I guess, Mahler and Copland, but then a lot of the things were elements he hadn't really heard before. And Robert Sterling and Joel Rainey said certain sections reminded him of Bernstein and one section of Stravinsky. And it was interesting to hear those comments, because I haven't been around people who are so immersed in the actual music production world. That was neat to hear their thoughts, because I'm always inside my head, like I don't know what to think, and honestly, I don't like most of what I do.
Really?
Yeah. And
how does that work?
Well, obviously I'm always going to be my own biggest critic, but what I do strive to do when writing is, if I can get past myself, then I'll have written something worthwhile. So if I can be almost inspired, if I can find some harmony or find some texture, find whatever it is that is something new, that is something that reaches a point or has a lift to it that surprises me.
You've had a breakthrough in your head.
Yeah. And I'll really take hold of that. And that's what I want to have happen. And honestly, I really struggle with, and sometimes I don't think about the big picture deal. Like, sometimes there are pieces where, like, I live for minute 3 at the 20-second mark, that specific moment that lasts like 5 seconds. I literally live for that moment in like a 20-minute work. Just that moment. I love it. And then I think, okay, well, I mean, the rest is fine, and it has some nice moments here and there, but I think I'm writing always thinking every single moment needs to be a whoa.
Oh.
And so sometimes I run into that struggle, needing to realize, okay, not if everything's that wow moment, or like, oh, that's nice, then all of it's going to be, then there's no interest, because it's all interest. So, or to find how to purposely use those moments of interest or other things to highlight it. And I know we talked about this before, but simplicity.
Right.
Simplicity for simplicity's sake. I don't know what to think about that.
Really?
But
simplicity for simplicity's sake?
Depends on what you're trying to do. Obviously, like if you're intending to write something. Yeah. Pause on that real quick. My trains of thought are kind of colliding or crossing tracks right now. So real quick, I'll backtrack to what Joseph Martin said real quick. During the masterclass, I did introduce Robert Sterling to MuseScore. He had not heard what MuseScore sounded like, and that was a big topic because,
like the MIDI samples.
Yeah, at that time, Finale hadn't ended. But they were talking about how Muse Group is doing their takeover and stuff, and how they bought out a lot. And anyway, I was able to show him how things look and kind of talk through a bit of that process. That was kind of fun.
Sure.
And then I guess Joseph wanted me to play. He had me play the one piece, and they talked a little bit about it. And this is where he brought up the comment, like, he said, I guess that I accomplished the one goal that he thinks composers should have, or he's heard from mentors about, how you want to half of the time lead people where they think the music is going to go, and then half of the time go in a different direction where they don't think it's going to go. And that's a lot of what I write is I'm like, I know that if I lead this way, people are going to think this, but if I lead that way and then do this, then it'll be a moment of interest, but it has to be purposeful. It can't be like, I'm just going to do something like quirky for the sake of, but with intentionality, using kind of those details. Anyway, then he had me play another piece for them, which he said something funny about, like that. He said that I'm gonna score his the motion picture version of his autobiography, something on the fantastic burden or the great burden of something awesomeness. I don't know what it was.
Oh,
the great genius, whatever,
unbearable weight, burden of talent,
something like that. Or he's a very quirky guy. If you get to meet him, he's like, that man can produce, like, everything. He's done everything, and he can put so much out there. And I don't know how that works yet. And
is he married?
Yes. Okay. Yes. He's his wife is Sue Martin.
I just some people produce so much, but they're not married. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's,
Yeah.
there's the time.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, that's fully his job, and then
Sure.
he does concerts.
That's awesome.
But anyway, I'm trying to remember where we had.
You were saying that not to be simple for simplicity's sake, there needs to be good context.
Yeah.
And before that, you were walking through how with your work, you don't like a lot of it, and sometimes you live for like minute 3 out of lot, and you kind of have to make it there.
Yeah, so that goes to like listening to others' works. Is there are specific moments, like there's this one concerto for 2 violins and bass I've been listening to by Kevin Putz called Contact. It's a really, really neat work. He's an American composer living now. And there's this one specific moment in the 4th movement that takes the main motive from the 1st movement, and it's just perfection. It's so simple. And this is where if like learning, like simple is honestly the best that you can, like if you can master simplicity, that's where I think some of the best things come from, because oftentimes I think our crutch is using many details. I'm trying to think of the right words. Can't think of it.
Throw more paint at the canvas.
Yeah. It's just if we can't learn how to use simple well, or use like singular instruments to give this idea or this line like the right shape, or to like, if you can perfect a single line and then 2 lines together and how they interact with each other, 2 textures together, and then build on that, eventually, like I say, like, okay, I have chosen to not write a symphony yet. I'm not going to do that, and I won't. I haven't graduated to that level. I haven't made it to the place where I could respect myself enough to know that I'm going to intentionally write every part, and it's not going to be random. I want to have specific intentions, and I want to know that I have the right palettes ready. I have accomplished certain goals in music, some with my recent premiere, which we're about to discuss. So,
sure.
Daniel Gowans, Junya Manami, and I were all contacted about a new event on campus that hasn't happened before, and it was going to be an evening with the composers, and it was going to be a concert in which we would each be able to premiere a new work or a couple short works. And so I did have something ready because I had just written something, and something was just premiered, so I could have used that. I remember this. And so was I going to do that? No. I wasn't going to reuse something.
It's too easy.
If I'm given an opportunity, I want to take advantage of it, because that opportunity was such a godsend, honestly, because it gave me a reason to write. And specifically over the summer, especially at the beginning, I had a lot to say and a lot to think about. So this piece was very, very personal to me. And I set out with the intention, one, I wasn't like, if I was going to take advantage of this opportunity and make the most of it, for me, I wanted to use orchestra. That is where I thrive. And also, if you have everything, I also have the ability to go down, like to bring it down to just single sections or singular instruments. So there is a violin solo in the piece, just violin for like 16, 50 measures-ish. And there's a woodwind only section. There's a brass chorale. There are string only sections. There's interplay between soloists. There's a soprano solo. So I can walk through a little bit of that. I came up with the idea for the piece when I was at the Composer Symposium.
Cool.
So my goal for the piece was, firstly, I I'm such an impatient composer and just artist in general. Like I want to get something done and I want to see visible progress, like that. Um, and that I need to learn to push back on my those tendencies and those habits. And this piece definitely stretched me because I wanted to write something that was at least 15 minutes. I wanted to reach the 15-minute mark because normally I hadn't gone much over 4 or 5 minutes. And those pieces I would write in like a couple days or a few days.
Which is still good.
Yeah. But this is the longest I've spent actually writing something. In total, it probably took a few weeks, but it was spread out over the summer because there were a lot of times I couldn't write. But I would spend a lot of time in the recital hall on campus. I had the VPA almost to myself and would just spend time messing around and thinking through ideas. And while I was at the symposium, I knew I wanted to find a single word that I could really elaborate on a lot. And so the word that came to me was reminiscence. And I thought it would be really interesting to explore memories, and what comes with memories, the emotions that are rehashed is a poor word, but that you re-experience in a way through memories. And as believers, all moments in our lives have purpose. And so I really wanted to explore all the different ideas. So I broke up this piece into three different sections. So the first one is to reminisce. And so I wrote a theme that well, while I was at the symposium, I talked to some composers because I was guilty. I was about to do something I thought was wrong, and that was to take from another composer a very specific harmony, just progression and texture. It's from Wolfgang Williams' Second Symphony, his London Symphony, the second movement, the lento movement. It must be like a minute and a half into the symphony, which it's reused throughout. Sure. The strings have this texture where it's a major 1 to 4. And I'm trying to think. I didn't replicate exactly the specific voicing. What key was it in? I'm trying to think now. I've forgotten. That's sad.
You're fine. You're fine.
Anyway, well, I took from the key as well. It was in C. And that's, so I thought it would be interesting to have this regret, or not regret, we're not on that yet. Reminiscence. The reminiscence section that it would be based in C major, because C major for us is home key. It is home. It is what we all start out with. And what I thought about it is I don't want to use it like I feel it's sometimes used, where it's like we're just going back to C. But how can C have a new color or feel like you haven't heard it before? So I utilized muted strings. I used solo horn as an opening line. So the piece starts and horn has this opening line that is this, it's almost a call that brings in the memories, it's the entrance into reminiscence. And then trumpet states the melody for the first time in part, and then it's piano. So I decided to use piano as well, because piano is also the first instrument. It's almost like a home instrument for most people because it's the most played, the most frequently learned instrument, I guess. And one that you might, like, there's a very high chance of you hearing it growing up, whereas other instruments, maybe. Anyway, so I wrote it for piano, and there are moments in the, I guess, that section where after I state the theme, I was writing this line, the string line, and it ascended, and it reached this point that I didn't expect. And this is where I am not a traditional composer, and I don't do things like people normally would, because I don't really plan out a lot. I just give myself like these very vague guidelines, like 15 minutes, and I'm going to have a climax here at the end. Maybe I'll repeat my first section, and then I'm going to have maybe some string thing here, and that's about it. 15 minutes.
And the rest will just naturally...
Yeah, and that's what I love. I want to use my time to compose and my writing to be this exploration. It's my, like, I would love to go for a walk outside, or I'd love to walk in the mountains. I haven't seen mountains in so long, but I would love to go do that and explore. And so music for me is just that, where I don't study a lot of theory, and I intend not to know too much, or to know how every single tool works, because I want to discover it for myself, and I want to discover how I think the tools should be used, and I want to develop my own sound, and I've been working on that, and I have found my own sound, and it makes its way into pieces and changes, but I have reached that point, which is exciting in a way.
Not a lot of people, I think, can say that.
But what was neat about this moment is I totally didn't anticipate it, but I just ran with it. I was like, all right, we're going to take it. And it's probably one of my favorite moments. Every time we reach that moment, it was this lift, that this brief modulation that takes you to just this moment of, honestly, it's like experiencing some of your best memories, or the beauty of them. And it was just perfect. And it wasn't me. I felt like I didn't do it, and I felt like it was on accident. And I love that. And I did pray that the Lord would just help me to find the right words to say, because I don't know what I'm doing. And that was fun about the symposium, is we could all admit we don't know what we're doing either. And that's what's so fun about it. And we're always trying to find something new to say. Anyway, so then the piece, that climax kind of dies down into this. I have this transition section that happens twice, and it's supposed to be the memories fading away. So there's this repeating motive that happens, and it's almost sad. It's this idea that I wish I could go back. I wish I could.
You're trying to relive it in your head.
Yes, yeah. It's a good thing, and it's also in a way sad. But then a voice enters, and this was my idea, is I'm going to literally create the voice of regret. That little voice that you hear in your head that enters and that reminds you of things that maybe you did or things that happened. Regret, the memories of regret specifically, are interesting to me because, they are things we can't change. And we wish we could oftentimes. But if we let that voice get into our head and then we listen to it, then it goes down this path. And that's what I kind of take the listener on in this specific moment. The voice enters, and then a violin and a solo cello, they respond to it. They repeat a motive, and they start passing the motive back and forth. And then gradually groupings of instruments start to layer in, and it starts to just build this chaotic moment where it gets so loud. It's the more you dwell on it, or the more you even try to stop thinking about it, the louder that voice becomes. And it's interesting, until all the person can do is shut it out. So it just goes into complete silence for a second. And then high strings enter, and this portion is where the regret isn't dealt with yet. So it's almost just grief. And so it was just string writing. Anyway, it kind of tapers down into this moment that I wrote for piano. So I wrote this little line for piano, and there's a funny story behind this, which I actually, the night of the composer concert, I was gonna mention this in my comments and forgot. So it was kind of funny. So this melody I wrote, I want to say first semester or second semester, maybe beginning of second semester, sophomore year. Um, the idea came to mind when I was microwaving a cheeseburger at varsity on campus. I was like, I just had the melody popped in my head, and that rarely happens that way. So then I went to write it, and it was just for piano. And I played it all the time. But what's interesting is I go to the piano to think and process things. So oftentimes I write things, and I'll go play them at specific moments. So I always played that at very specific moments of my life during that time. And there was also one other short little piece that I was also playing during that time that was an entirely different piece. And what was interesting is the main line follows the line of regret, follows Zelda Manny was the solo soprano. She did a fantastic job. I knew right when I decided to do that in Texas, I wrote down her name in the notebook I was writing in as the who would sing that line. She did wonderful. But what was interesting is the line I had been playing for piano was in her line. So I decided that I would incorporate both of those so that every primary theme is piano will touch on. And so the third theme is the idea to reconcile. So it's the reconciliation of those memories of regret into reminiscence as a whole. So it's the reminder that, there are a lot of moments I regret, but thank the Lord that he uses those moments and that none of it happened in vain. And that honestly, he grows us all the more because of those moments. When Paul talks about, I'll glory in my infirmities, so the power of Christ may rest upon me. And that, what is the passage about? Count it all joy, brethren, when
you fall into temptations.
Yeah, which is various trials, and I do, in part, I can understand that because that's where Christ has revealed himself the most to me, where he's drawn me to him. I found this passage recently in Psalm 119:67, if I can remember it. The psalmist says that, and maybe I'll need to pull it up. Trying to think.
I got you, bro.
I appreciate it.
Psalm 119:67, you said?
Yes. I know the second half, but I need to know like one specific word. Because he's basically talking about
Psalm 119:67.
Oh, before I was afflicted, I went astray, or
yes, before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now have I kept thy word.
Yeah, and in that, so the next part,
there you go.
Yeah, 67 says, "Thou art good and doest good." So here, it's interesting because before I was afflicted, I went astray. That's like how he was wandering. He wasn't close to the Lord. But then it's interesting how the Lord is so good in that he gets our attention because honestly, I need that so often. But then in the affliction, the psalmist turns to the Lord, and that's where the Lord shows himself to us when we draw near to him, and then we see his goodness through that.
Mm.
And honestly, sometimes I'm so grateful that the Lord, one, as a believer, that we just have hope. And this is specifically what this song is supposed to bring the listener to is, as believers, we have eternal hope. And we know that those moments in our lives, that the Lord uses them, that all things work together for good, to those who love God and who are called according to his purposes. So it was encouraging to work on it, because a lot of those moments, I'll give that back to you. Thank you. A lot of that piece is the most raw I've ever written. I wrote from the deepest part of me, and I prayed that the Lord would help bring that out. And so that idea of reconciliation, the piano states it, and then strings enter, and then it goes into the development where the woodwinds have their section. And so the woodwind section, after the soprano comes back in, so it's basically the line of regret comes back. And so now I just wrote the section for woodwinds, and I didn't know what was going on originally, and I had a lot of fun with it because it's the section of wandering. It doesn't really go anywhere. There are some peaks, but it's just the idea of I've experienced before where, like, I struggled to believe certain things, that they were true, or I struggled to draw on the truth. And so there was this constant, the truth was spoken, and I would hear it and I would say, yeah, but this, and so is that just this back and forth. So the oboe line, it says something, and then the other woodwinds respond back, and it's just this. In the end, nothing really came of it. It just wandered. It was this. It's just a wandering state, and that's how I feel like a lot of moments in my life have kind of been, where it's I'm not pressing towards a mark. I'm just going with some flow, and not drawing closer to the Lord.
And wasn't there a part when, Zelda, who's singing the voice of regrets, she starts in the back of the auditorium, right?
Yes.
And then as it moves towards reconciliation, she comes towards the front to sing, right?
Yeah. So this is my idea from the very beginning, and praise the Lord that it worked out, was to have her in the balcony. I wanted the voice to be separate from the orchestra, because the orchestra represents the individual.
And regret's almost disconnected from reality.
Yes, it's supposed to be calling out to the individual. And that's what's interesting, is they're supposed to be distinct. And so the woodwinds have their wandering section, and then I wrote what for me was the most beautiful line I've written, and what was special to me about this was it came out again like an accident. Like, I don't know how that came, but it touched me, I guess. And for me, that was exactly what I wanted to say. It was this moment where the strings, it was a string section, and I purposely wanted to work on my string writing, because as a string player, I'm not the best at writing for strings. And so I specifically wanted to work with strings. And this moment is, I use different motives and just lush harmonies, and I reach this climax on this higher, it's like a high G or something for the violins, that's almost like this, like, beautiful crying, if you think about it like that. It was almost to recognize the beauty in those regretful moments. And right after this, that's stated, it kind of descends and goes into that transition I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is now that transition happens after to regret, that idea. So it's almost like wishing you could go back, or that you could re-experience what that was like.
Keep talking. I'm gonna look up a Bible verse.
And so that transition gets interrupted by a brass chorale, and the piece was written for a couple of my friends in particular who the Lord really used in my life to speak truth to me at a time when I needed it. And so one of them who played trumpet, Caleb, had a solo line, and that section was supposed to represent specifically the people that the Lord used to speak truth. And then that line descends, and the brass join in on the as I recap a couple measures of the transition, and then it dies away, fades away into a violin solo. And that's an interesting moment because, yeah, it's supposed to represent me or any individual as they're now alone. They're alone to make their decision, because all of these people and the Lord, like, were to draw closer to him, but you have to make up your mind. You have to choose.
Move on.
Yeah. So that violin solo is just, it goes back and forth, and it's almost like crying out. And then eventually, after it plays for a while, then strings enter, and there's this just a build of tension that keeps on building till there's this high string, really loud, just all high strings, dissonant moment where a lot of suspensions happen, and it's just basically like letting out, like the release of all the grief and sorrow. It's just raw. It's so raw.
It's like from the depths of your soul.
Yes, that's where it's yes. And then it cuts off, and there's silence. It's another moment like that. And this time high strings come back in, and it all leads to dealing with regret. And this is where the piano line comes in. And Zelda, the solo soprano, this is when she came onto stage. Now this voice is united with the orchestra. This voice is united with the individual, because the individual has accepted regret as part of Reminiscence as a whole, has reconciled it into Reminiscence, and seen its purpose. And so now the voice, along with the violins and piano, all play together that line. And you know what's really neat about this?
What's that?
So the line of regret is da 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 da. It's just a few notes. It's wow, that's not it. What is it?
Don't regret this.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, no, that's almost it. It's kind of that. It's just an ascending few. The piano line that I've been playing was actually the inverse of that.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Was that unintentional?
It was unintentional. And I didn't realize that until after the premiere.
Your brain.
So that was the coolest thing when I finally realized that it's actually the exact thing, but opposite. So instead, because the part was intended to be the dealing with regret, basically, and the acceptance of it, and how the Lord uses those moments. And so after it finishes, I did something very traditional, and I did like a very traditional, the 5 of this goes to the 1 of the new key, something like that, and I modulate, and I do the theme of reconciliation with the,
it's more simple.
The whole orchestra this time does it, and there's this big climax, and it gets really loud and cuts off, and instead of silence, now the high violins hold over. So this is the first time there's a gap bridged, because that's just supposed to show the agreement. There's no longer this disconnect.
There's a unified note.
Yeah. It's just shows the connection that now all these moments are accepted into Reminiscence. And so, yeah, it's the unified thought. And then it just goes back and recaps the theme from Reminiscence. So
Wow.
it was a really, that project was a really neat experience.
It's a passion project.
Yeah,
quite
definitely.
literally.
And it was hard at times to, like, it was such a privilege to work with the symphony here at school, um and to hear it come to life and to direct it, because that's one of my deepest passions, is to direct and uh, to work with live musicians.
That's got to be such a surreal experience to write an orchestration that is just such a deep part of you, and then work with a huge group, and maybe half to most of them or all of them weren't entirely aware of the nuances of the story you're trying to convey
Mm-hmm.
from your own past and your own reminiscence and your own regrets. And here you have these amazing musicians just putting it on display.
Yeah.
And you're almost, it's almost like such a meta out of body experience, because in a sense, as a performer, you can tend to have an out of body experience, but you quite literally are watching it in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Just talented people convey the nuances that you're going for.
Yeah.
And
It, it really was incredible, and they did a fantastic job, and it was a blessing getting to work with them, and it was neat because the piece has even deeper meanings for me personally.
Yeah.
Many specific meanings, but I just pray that the Lord was able to use it in that night. And I don't know if it'll ever be played again. But it was written for that night and for the people that played it specifically. And so that was just an incredible experience and blessing.
I'm just sitting in the thought, for such an incredible passion project, why would you think it wouldn't be played again? I know you said it was like written for that night, but is that something that, like you said, what needed to be said, you saw it, you heard it, you experienced it, and you're almost content to move on to bigger and better?
In a way, it was meant for that specific time, and to say that at that specific moment. And like I haven't tried or attempted to publish anything yet, and I don't think I would want to, especially with that. And if it were to be played again, it would be at a very specific moment as well. But I don't think I would be willing to give it to other people if they don't know what it means.
Like it would almost devalue it.
I don't know. I think, like, I know that I think the Lord can use anything. It's the fact that he uses, imperfect people are the people he chooses to use, and
really
who he has to use.
The only people.
Which it's so
yeah.
It's so interesting to me. I heard some messages about it recently about like and this is I guess convicting to me, like Moses, the Lord called him to go speak to Pharaoh, right? And Moses, laughs. He like, or no, he's terrified, like he can't speak.
Gives all the excuses.
And the Lord's like, yeah, you know better than I do,
Yeah.
it's the fact that the Lord chose him. And then was thinking even about Paul, like it's amazing, Paul's story, and the fact that I can't imagine having the courage to go back to the people that you persecuted to actually that's just incredible to me, because I would be terrified. I don't think I could ever show my face if that ever happened to those people. And yet the way the Lord chose him and used him, and just good reminders of the fact that I so grateful that the Lord can use us despite ourselves. and that and just, I guess, a prayer that will be willing to be used in whatever way he sees fit. And that's one of the things I've been thinking about lately is um, I think I sometimes put limits on myself because I think I can only do this, or I don't know if I really should go that far or to try to do this, because I always have goals. Like I want to get this done, and I want to try to do this and shoot for this, like go big or go home. That's often my mentality, is like, it may be a big fail, but I'm just going to go for it. And sometimes like sometimes it kind of, crumbles a bit, but I recently reminded of like the Lord, in the case of Daniel, he was set apart and was able to be in the palace with his few friends because he was wise, because he had experience and knowledge in different areas. He was actually, because he worked hard and learned in the area he was put, then he was able to be used and be able to interact and be used in very important situations and moments in history. And then we see the same is true for Paul. His education and the fact that he was able to talk with the leaders of, the temple, and to all these different people that that were diligent in their craft or their whatever they were placed in, and that the Lord used that. And so I've decided that I need to just start writing. Like, too long I avoid it, or I get a little bit scared. I don't know what to do, and I don't know what I'm doing. But
You'd regret it if you didn't.
yeah, and I need to fully rely on the Lord and just ask Him that'll give me the ideas and the things to say. But it's hard, like, getting caught up. Like, there's so many different things I want to do. Like, I got a guitar over winter break, and I started learning. Like, it's something that, like, for me, it would be the same as piano, where I could just think, but I want to learn how to play melodically, and like I could take it to go outside if I go hiking. Sure. And obviously, like, I do percussion for band or timpani, which that's so much fun. Very different from violin. But even like we were talking earlier about what happened. So obviously the composer concert happened, and earlier that year, like right around the same time as the Heather Sorensen concert on campus, my church did the Savior Oratorio, which was it's by Greg Nelson and a number of and David Hamilton and another writer. Anyway, we had soloists come in for that. But then later I heard that its 30th anniversary concert was going to be at Kennedy Center. Mm-hmm. And I heard there, well, my music minister told me about it, or that he could save a spot for me. And so at the very last minute, early this year, I decided to do it. And that was one of the moments where, like, honestly, I didn't want to do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't. Because I get really nervous missing classes, especially at the beginning of the semester, because then if I get behind catching up, I don't want the snowball effect to happen, And so but I committed, and it was only after that, it's one of those moments where the Lord wants you sometimes to make a decision out of faith, and then He'll show you what He had in store for you after. And so I found out that there was anonymous funding, and some more opportunities came as a result of that. And so I went up to DC and had the opportunity of playing for this oratorio with soloists and people from orchestras from across the U.S. really incredible experience, and a lot of the soloists like Gaither artists, and it was a really neat experience. And to play in that venue, like beautiful, and also the backstage area, that's what National Symphony Orchestra uses.
It's like
and
a once in a lifetime.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like there were photo frames covering the walls, and signatures and photos of all of these like world class soloists. And there was one of Copeland that I was kind of giddy to see, and he wrote a little note to National Symphony Orchestra. But then you have like
awesome.
all the greats. It was really neat. But in the process, I was able to meet this company that rents out these facilities to do these concerts. And so that's how I got the opportunity to play at Carnegie Hall 2 times this summer. I will be playing in end of June and middle of July. I'll be playing at Carnegie Hall. And one concert is with Mark Hayes, who's a composer I really admired. Honestly, he was one of the reasons I was going to go to the composer symposium in Texas, because he was supposed to be there, but he ended up not being there. So anyway, I'll get to meet him when I go up for this thing. But I'm also hoping to get some time to just write a lot, and to arrange and to work with hymns, like hymn arrangements. Instrumental hymn arrangements are hard because so many of the hymns have been used and they've been done the same way. And then oftentimes you just find arrangements that are kind of boring, in that, the first verse is the verse of the hymn, no changes, no alterations, no reharmonizations. And the second verse is about the same thing, but with passing tones.
Ooh.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy, man. Really out there. And then the third verse will get you, because that one has like some 16th note little runs, or it's like goes crazy. Wow. Like it's out there, and at that point maybe piano's doing something rhythmic or something, but it's I really want to work on writing arrangements for different instruments and different instrument groupings. And recently I've been thinking about kind of a brass choir or brass quintet. I want to do arrangements of some spirituals, like Swing Low Sweet Chariot. Yeah. I want to do slow it down, and to work on very intentional voicings, where you can think on the words. Like sometimes we rush through hymns when we're singing, and you can never really think about what the words mean. It's like we're just going through the motions again. But sometimes I was reading later in Psalm 119, the psalmist says, I will meditate on thy word all the day long. And when he talks about meditating, just mulling it over, I can't think. I can't think. Anyway, but dwelling on it and really pondering the truths of the word. And so that idea where I can write for these instrument groupings, where you can think and dwell on those truths. Sure. Sometimes recently I've been listening to some songs where they just take scripture, and it's simple, but it's just I listen to it on repeat. Honestly, when I'm going to sleep, I listen to these songs on repeat, just one song. And there's one I've been listening to that, is the passage from Psalm 51 that talks about, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. And it goes on from there. But, there's another one that's, whatever's pure. I'm trying to think, whatever's noble, whatever's pure, whatever's true, whatever has virtue, whatever is worthy, think on these things. Like, that's what I think it's, there's some significance in what the Lord tells us to dwell on, what he wants us to think on, because if, the brain is our control center, right? But what are we supposed to allow to have prominence in our minds? What are we supposed to give attention to? And recently, I've been drawn back to it's seemingly simple, but the importance of gratitude, really. And in part, Reminiscence was about that gratitude, simply like just a thank you to the Lord. Like, it's amazing what happens when you dwell on all of the blessings, because the Lord has blessed me with so much, and it's very humbling to think about, because I don't deserve any of it, none of it. But the Lord gave anyway. And recently I've also been reading in Job, and really interesting. I know this is a tangent.
I'm here for it.
So, Job opens is really interesting because Job makes sacrifices on behalf of his sons who are feasting with their sisters at one of their houses. And he makes sacrifices on their behalf in case they've cursed God in their hearts. And I thought that was really interesting. As a reminder, we know what Christ did on our behalf. And it was the fact that they didn't ask him to do that. But that's true love right there. That is love, that it was selfless. And I'll get on that point. That brings up one other point really quick. Anyway, then, we get to see, and I haven't, honestly, this is the first time I've really realized, like, wow, this book is all about spiritual warfare, and you're literally getting to see it from the perspective of heaven. You're in the throne room, like, here is God, and, there's this gathering, and, Satan himself comes in.
God's like, what's up, man?
Yeah, and he's
what
like,
you doing?
Oh, roaming to and fro on the earth,
Yeah,
just man.
Chilling. It was not that, it was different dynamic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, and what's really interesting is, obviously the Lord points Job out, and this has been interesting to me because he's like, the Lord recognizes Job's integrity, and that he is a man of integrity, and that he walks upright, and he points him out to the enemy, and the enemy, in his finite mind, he thinks he knows exactly what will break Job. And so then you see it in the next chapter, maybe it's later in that chapter, that it begins, and you have these four kind of groupings of phrases. The first one, they say, and a man came, or this, and then came. And then a few sentences later, and then another came. Then another came, and then another came. It's interesting how the enemy does this thing where, to trip us up, he throws like one obstacle or one distraction in, and then he'll throw another and another and another, and layer it until we cave. Like he thinks if it's just so much that it's overwhelming, we'll just break, And it's really interesting. Like, it culminates in that fourth messenger that comes, and it's like, your sons, your children have all died, and I was the only one to escape. Like, I can't imagine that. And you know what Job does? And it's just crazy to me, because if I were in this situation, I can't imagine doing this. And Job literally, he, tears his garments, and he falls to the ground, and he worships.
Yeah.
Like,
and it might be just getting down to semantics, but that very well could have been Job breaking. I mean, he broke. He did break, but he chose to break with God. And
that's exactly like the whole point of Job, in that he stayed there next to the Lord. He was with the Lord. He didn't run from the Lord. But what's interesting is, right after that, he says that, the Lord gave and he hath taken away. And that's something that I've been reminded of. Like, Lord, I didn't deserve any of this, and you gave. And when I've seen things taken away, it's been a reminder, like, Lord, you gave. I didn't deserve it in the first place. Thank you that you gave. Like, now you've taken away, but you gave. I didn't deserve that. And it's just, it's really incredible. And I mean, obviously it goes like, really interesting because it gets into this whole other topic of like Job's friends. And he says this one line in it that's so interesting to me. He's like, what miserable comforters ye are. And he says, I could speak as you do. Like, and they sit with him for like a week and they don't say words. Yep, no words. And then Job speaks. And the first thing as friends they do is to just criticize him. They're like, you must have done something wrong. And
so many thoughts in my head.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, because I did a study on Job a few months ago, or I guess it'd be longer now, but I put responsibility on Job's friends because God does. God looks at the friends and says, I disapprove. Job, sacrifice for them on their behalf and pray so I don't kill them. So that's what happens, and God does not kill them. And I'm convinced that one of the biggest things Satan did is that in that 7 days of silence, Satan was messing with all their heads. Because they're in their heads, they're thinking for 7 whole days. When they have 7 days of silence in front of a guy whose entire life is falling apart, I mean, yes, like I just said, like I give them responsibility. I blame them because God gives that blame. But at the same time, I mean, they had to have been face to face with spiritual warfare too. And God pointed at Job and said, this guy's up for the task. And he didn't point at the friends and say they were up to it.
Right.
But in them showing up for Job, it was their attempt to help bear the weight. I don't think they could bear the weight because they didn't have the aged maturity that Job exercised in the moment. And also, by the end, God isn't happy with Job either. Because Job's pride starts to creep up, and he says, "Well, no, like I haven't done anything.
Yeah, where were you?"
And I don't necessarily blame Job either. Like God looks at Job and says, "Job, just stop talking. Let me talk." But I also don't place that much blame on Job because what do you expect? I mean, like we said, you lose your kids, you lose your wealth, you essentially lose your wife. Because like, even though there's not a divorce, but you talk
still
about
keep thine integrity, curse God and die.
You talk about division in a marriage.
Look at that.
Yeah, you talk about a division in marriage.
Wife,
Yeah, division in marriage. I mean, it doesn't get more intense than the one spouse saying God gives and takes away, and the other says curse God and die. I mean, you don't get further apart.
And that's crazy because it's the one that experienced all of that, specifically like targeting him with that. Like that was right after the second attack where he's covered in boils now.
There's speculation that Elihu is really pre-incarnate Christ, because when Elihu comes in with wisdom, God just picks up the train of thought. Now my reason to believe it's not the case is because when it introduces Elihu, I believe it introduces him as son of XYZ. So it's not like he appeared out of thin air. He actually had a family or lineage. But no, Job, I mean, I just feel like I have to get at least one or two other thoughts because it's been such a long time. No, it just amazes me that God was essentially the initiator. That God said, "Hey, Satan, do you have some free time? Because I have an idea." And after it all, God doubled everything that Job had, and he had a good rest of his life. But I sometimes I wonder, just to maybe connect this back to music. Um, I go back to something you were talking about when you were talking about prayer and praying to God, and be like, God, you give, you take away, and feeling inadequate, not being happy with some of your music. And I remember a few years ago, I had some time in prayer, and I was torn about so many things relating to music. And to be honest, I'm kind of blanking on the season in my life, but I just
Mhm.
remember feeling so broken. And I was in prayer, and the thought hit me, what is going on from the heavenly perspective?
Hmm.
What's like when I'm praying about this topic with music, or this topic with music, or this area of my heart relating to music, or this, like, what the angels. Some people debate the angels aren't musical, and one of the things that separate us from angels is that whenever it refers to angels, it's using the word for shouting, not singing. I'm not going to get into that, and I forget my thoughts on that anyways. But 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 the angels' perspective on our music, you know, do angels have an opportunity to regret or reminisce about things they remember? And when they're listening to your music, for you, it's an out of body experience. Like, no, but like, there's so many things that God's created, and God created the angels, and like the tensions we feel in making our craft. Like, does heaven feel that tension?
Hmm.
Is God on the edge of his seat because he knows you need more challenge, and he's not going to let it come so easily? And yeah, it's not going to be the best, and I dare you to fight through.
I feel like you would never be on the edge of a seat. I feel like you would, be sitting back again and be like, like how casual
Yeah.
you see, oh, how about my servant Job?
Yeah.
Like uh, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how deep I like to go with, you know, thinking about all the things we don't know for sure.
Speculation.
Yeah, any speculation, because sometimes I see how quick I am to forget the smallest details, like the smallest things, like simply the goodness of God, and the fact that He is our constant, and the fact that I I go through Psalms and Proverbs, and I go through Scripture, and there you constantly see this, do this, and then this will happen.
Cause and effect.
Yeah, and like I like we're to act in obedience because of our our love for Christ, and our desire to become more like Him. And as a result of that, we see the fruits. Like the fruits of the Spirit come because we're dwelling in Him. The more time we spend with Him, it's like the more time I spend with a friend, the more I start to act or maybe talk like them. It's the same with Christ. The more time I spend in His Word, the more time I am able to bring to mind His characteristics, who He is. The more time, or the more often, maybe I'll start to look a little bit more like Him. Obviously, it's always going to be imperfect. And Pastor Ellen once preached this message. It was at the end of my sophomore year, and it was actually talking about like seeing challenges and difficult moments in our lives and trials as blessings from the Lord, because it's pretty neat when He shows us, like, I'm giving an opportunity to you where you can grow in me, where you can come to know me. Like sometimes I I and it was even with this idea of the regret, like um I would hope that I would never have the opportunity to go back and change anything, even with how much I would regret it, because if it didn't happen, I might not see my need for God. If it didn't happen, I would see myself as perfectly sufficient for myself. I don't need someone. But the Lord, in His grace, brought moments into my life to show me, you aren't sufficient, but I am. And And that's been incredible because literally it started once I started college. Um, I don't think I came into college with any expectation of growing. I don't think I did, but that's all. Like, that's been almost sometimes more intense than the music and the academics, has just been the growing. And I know I'm not the same person as when I first came in. But that's the Lord's grace to me. I heard some quote or something about, I prayed for wisdom, and the Lord brought opportunities into my life that would give me the need to draw to Him for wisdom, to ask Him for wisdom, or to draw from truth. And I prayed for strength, and the Lord brought opportunities into my life where I would need to draw from His strength, because I'm weak, but He is strong. Like, simple truth like that.
Yeah.
Jesus Loves Me is a really good song. Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so.
Yeah.
Little ones to Him belong. They are weak, but He is strong. That's where, like, Christianity, you see the contrast from other religions.
Oh, yeah.
Or I don't like thinking like I don't say I'm a religious person because I'm a Christian. That's who I am. That's my identity. Being religious is some
like an add-on.
It's
Yeah.
I guess.
Huh.
I don't like thinking about it like that, I guess. But what's interesting is sorry, I totally lost that train of thought. Oh, wow. So I can totally picture a train like driving out this side of my head, and like,
If the
it's
train
gone.
crashes, I'm going
It's
down
gone.
with you.
It's gone.
You're a good man.
Anyway, but I was on, they're weak, but He is strong. And then
You wouldn't change the things that you regret, because otherwise you wouldn't need God. And what makes Christianity
oh yeah,
different.
yeah, the fact that it's not about us.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about our own efforts. And that's, you can recognize what the flesh, it's all about, I want this, or I need to do this, or I need to be able to do this to see myself as this. And it's always this focus back on me and me and me. Like, it's so self-centered. And, recently that's been something that's convicting. Like, the more I spend time in God's word, and the more I'm able to recognize things in myself and see, wow, okay, that's not Christ-like. Like, thank you, Lord, for showing me that. Like, I'm grateful for that. And I pray that you'll show me how to change that. Like, I started using 1 Corinthians 13 as this gauge for how I love others.
That's a good gauge.
Yeah. It's like
pretty thorough.
Yeah. The biggest convicting part is, love is not self-seeking. And sometimes I'd see like, okay, I know I did that thing because I love that person, but also I know there was a little bit of in it that was like, it's, what's in it for me? Or like I get something out of it. But like, what is love that's not self-seeking? Doing something for others, not expecting something in return. It says it keeps no record of wrongs. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. It doesn't delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Like, all of these things, like, I love that I get to like take this tool belt. I get, like a tool belt where I can be like, I can recognize, this will bring this. If I do this, this will happen. I recognize, I guess, I can analyze things through the lens, obviously through the lens of Scripture, and be like, okay, I need to pull out this set of tools for this situation because these are the Scriptures that pertain for that, or to that. Like a big thing, like, I can't know my own motives, but in Isaiah it says, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. And earlier it says, thou hast searched me and known me. Thou knowest my downsetting and mine uprising. thou compassest or understandeth my thought afar off. He truly knows our thoughts, and that's when we ask him, Lord, I create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit in me. I pray that you will direct my thoughts, that you will, that I will, that you will give me the desires of my heart, but that the more I spend time with him, what he desires for me, what he wants is what I want. Now they're united.
It's a really comforting thought when you just look at the totality of who God is and those really difficult moments where you feel misunderstood, where you feel that people don't have the full picture, even to the song that you wrote, Reminiscence and Regret, where like only you know like what really went into it or what it really means and the story deep down, or to a moment where you love someone selflessly and you truly get the short stick and no one knows the sacrifice, or someone says something horrible to you and you can't defend yourself. And to all of those moments, I have moments where I lie in bed at night and I think to myself, but God, you know. You know.
Yeah.
Like if no one else can even come close to understanding how I feel, I think, but God, you know. And not only that, when you go further and you really think about what happened at the cross and what it means and the ramifications and what it took, we realize that Jesus doesn't just know or understand. Like he felt it in far deeper ways.
It's incredible to me.
Infinitely deeper ways.
Like, the fact that, like what I mentioned about Job and how he was sacrificing on behalf of, his sons. The fact that, we didn't invite or we didn't ask, God to send his son or to send someone to, come and save us.
Yeah.
No, the first opportunity we had to rebel, we rebelled. And then right after, like, God is so good, and he's we say he's the perfect friend, right? He is the one that keeps on trying to people who keep on turning from him, and that is incredible to me because that's the friend I would want to be. And I pray that the Lord will help me in that direction, because I know I always miss the mark. But the fact that, like, even with the tabernacle, thought about it, I was thinking about it because of a Bible study at my church, and they were talking about it, and the fact that, like, the Lord found a way or made a way so that he could still dwell with his people, and lead them. And there were specific things that had to happen, like with the tabernacle. Like there were a couple guys that tried to just go in and they hadn't followed the, right guidelines. And so they died. But it's the fact that was, the Lord gave this way, but imperfection cannot be in the presence of God. It cannot. And he gave them all these details because literally they couldn't live, or they wouldn't be able to do this, or it wouldn't be enough, because regardless, God is perfect. He's holy, and unholiness can't be there with God. And it's the fact that he made a way, like, even when we didn't ask or didn't want that. And that's incredible. Like, you see this, we talk about it in probably one of the Bible classes, like Old Testament, but we see the cycle of apostasy where, Israel is in fellowship with God, and then they sin, and then they're out of fellowship, but they experience trials, and then they turn back to God and cry to him to save them, and he does every single time. He does. It's just, that's why it's a cycle. It just keeps on. Like, that's an enduring, like, I can't imagine, like, that's incredible, being such an enduring I say friend, and that's a really way, it sounds like a limitation on God, but truly, when you see him as a friend and as our Heavenly Father, how much he does love us, to be willing to go to the point of sending his own son, who we didn't ask him to come, and we didn't receive him, and it's interesting, like they say, scarcely would a man die for a good man, let alone, us sinners, like people that rejected him. That's like, you'd say it's insane. Like, it's crazy. Like, why?
Yeah.
Like, we didn't care. We didn't want him, but it's amazing. Like, thinking about, like, as soon as he was on earth, he came for a purpose, and he lived his entire life to reach that purpose. I can't imagine, like, sometimes I think about it, like, he's growing up and he knows that one day he's going to die on the cross for the sins of the entire world, past, present, and future. Like, what is that? Like, I can't imagine, like, I can't imagine if that were, my destiny, man, I would try to find a way to get out, probably. I can't imagine that, but literally, he was obedient unto death, even the death of the cross.
And he did ask for a way out.
And he did. But he was like, but thy will be done.
The humanity kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Godhead, the Trinity, he knew the ramifications of what he was up against.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, it's really, it's humbling to think about, and the fact that, like, I can't imagine someone dying, like, for all my sins like that. That's scary.
Sure.
Just to think about that, one person, even, my sins in a week, like my thoughts, like all of these things, for someone to take that's terrible. But the fact that it's to give us this free gift, the opportunity to be restored to what we were created for fellowship with God, to glorify God. And that's something recently, I maybe it was a couple services ago, I was reminded again, it always feels so right whenever I worship God, whenever I'm worshiping God. Like, I sometimes, I love church rehearsals when we're playing through specific pieces, with truths in them and certain hymns, and I just love it. Like, I could play it again and again and again, and I wouldn't get tired of it. And it feels so right, because that's exactly what we were created to do. We were created to glorify our Savior. And it's so humbling, and it's like, I can't wait till we are worshiping in perfection like that. Yeah. I can't even imagine what that's like, because get little tastes of that sometimes, of Absolutely. What it's like in imperfection.
Yeah.
Which is.
Yeah. And part of what just when I think about the power of everything we're talking about and the glory of God, is that with how the gospel manifests itself in everyone's life, combined with the nuances of how we're all different musicians, it just really amplifies how unique your God-given song to God can be. Mm-hmm. Just think about the variety of humanity in general. Just like just think about the visual variety as a whole. There's 6 billion people, and like rarely do you see a doppelganger, but like somehow with genetics you can see the differences in everybody. But sonically and sound, I feel like differences are amplified that much more, and similarities on bringing people together. Like anyone can sit down and learn like a sonata on the piano, but going back to my main thought, like when you write an orchestration, that's just empowered by the passion of meditating on what God's done for you. And if I were to sit down and meditate on the same thing, it's going to manifest itself in such a different sound.
Yeah.
Such a different
It's
sound.
really...
But for you, when you express that, I sit and I listen and I think, man, God did something awesome in Isaiah's life. And suddenly I can appreciate it in almost a more relatable way because you found a way to communicate the emotion that God's brought to your heart into a sound. And then for me, you know, I sit down in the studio or I want to create something, you know, whether it's driving or reflective, and I put it out there, and you got a taste of CJ and you got a taste of Jesus Christ through me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, man, I was just thinking about this experience, this memory, this regret, this Bible verse, this story, I mean, you name it. And you get a song out of it that people can just sit back and just hold this 3 to 15 minute piece and listen to it over and over and over. And I'm just, now I'm on a rant, but like, I just never cease to be amazed at the time in history that we're placed in. Like the music industry.
Yeah.
Since when have we had so many tools? And dude, I'm just thinking even in the last 10, 15 years, like a home studio, the way to social network to get to an orchestra with people across the US. It's just like, we live in such an interconnected society where I think God's given more opportunity than ever before to put your craft out there, to show this is God in me.
Yeah.
This is what you get when the gospel has its effect. And it thrills me to no end. And I mean, I'm excited that as we keep going down this path, that as we let God continue to mold us to be like Christ, as that's happening, technology is just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And it's so, something that it's so convicting, but it crosses my mind on occasion. It was like years ago, there was a preacher that was talking about a lot of friends that had fallen away from the faith, and a lot of people that he knew that had fallen away from the faith. And he said, but I've never met a single man of prayer that fell away. I've never met someone who consistently prayed every day and fell away from the faith.
I've recently, like on that topic, prayer, that's something that the Lord has been definitely convicting me about in the past couple months. And I've seen like, today actually, like I've decided to sometimes, like before church the other day, I sat in my car for an hour and played one song that was going through scripture the entire time and just sat there dwelling on it and just in prayer. And then today, like I now go for walks in some free periods where I'm like, I'll do my Bible study in the morning. But just walking and just praying for others and just talking and fellowshipping. And honestly, I talk to God more now than I talk to pretty much anyone. It's just regular. When I'm going back and forth between classes, I'm chatting up with him in my head. I'm talking to him out loud.
God, that
when I'm
class period made no sense.
but it's exciting, the opportunity to become more like him, and the fact that you have a goal. Like I have this goal, and Lord, you've given me a purpose. Like I have an eternal purpose. That is amazing. And it's the fact that we can, like, I believe he's called both of us to use music in some capacity. And it is really interesting to write music this day and age, because like so much has been written, and sometimes I wonder like how
can we get something new?
And that's
like
that's
really
a big
new
thing. Like I've been told before, like, you know, what you've written, you know, maybe like other composers may have already said that better. And honestly, I agree in part with that. And then I know, like, okay, you can't limit what the Lord can do. Like we could put limitations on things. And that's what is unique about how God made us all so different with different perspectives. And if only it touches, you know, one person, like that's worthwhile, just fulfilling that purpose. And also, like, when I write something, beauty is it's an interesting word, because when I write, I draw inspiration from, I draw it from music, but I draw it from nature and from God's creation, and we see, you know, this beauty in this imperfect world, and and I it's interesting. Like, sometimes I wonder, in music in heaven, like, what kind of contrast will there be? You know how, when I was thinking about it lately, like, okay, if I were to go to the piano over there and I would play, say, um, a C scale, or I just hold down all the notes in C or in one key, it sound kind of muddy. But if you have um 7 voices sing it, oh, it's gorgeous. Like, something about the timbre of the voice and the way um we were the timbres are able to interact with each other is uh so unique, in that these dissonances can be heard or experienced in a different way, relating to the timbre with which they're produced.
Sure.
And like, thinking, okay, when I write, what is a reflection of, what could be a reflection of Christ? What is beautiful? Like, I love to use, whenever I'm writing something that has to do with God himself, I write something that doesn't sound earthly, meaning harmonies that always use, like, that change the colors, that all the colors get changed, where, we think, like, the majesty and glory of your name. I don't know if you know that song,
Not at the top
but
of my head.
that song is drawn from, I want to say it's Psalm 8, or Psalm 19. Well, Psalm 8 and Psalm 19 are like passages as a creative that I go to, because maybe it's in Psalm 19. It's like, you know, the sun, moon, and stars, which when I look at the heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, stars, which you've uh,
What
made.
you've created,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Like,
what
what
is
is man that
that
you're mindful of
them?
him, or the son of man that you visit him? It's so interesting to me, like, oh, how small we are, and how incredibly uh, glorious he is. And the fact that he, not a sparrow falls to the ground without him noticing.
Yeah.
And how much more are, we over the sparrows. But the fact that, like, now, like, I'm not writing, and what I'm writing is not what's popular today. Like, what's popular, or what's the more
Contemporary.
Yeah, the way to write
Mainstream.
in classical is, like, modern, is being stretched. And it's being stretched to the point, and this is my opinion, and take it for what it is. It's all these things are, subjective, I guess. But there has to be some true form of beauty, right? If God is perfection, if he is beauty, if what he creates is beautiful in its original state, he determines that. Nowadays, oftentimes music becomes more about the idea, and, like, what is music intended to be? Like, sometimes it becomes all about noise. Like, it's a sound, and it's there's so much dissonance, or so much where you can't even find the resolution. And that's an interesting thing. Like, Mahler, this is interesting. I was studying Mahler for a paper that I was writing last semester, but it's specifically his Second Symphony, which is probably his most famous, but his Resurrection Symphony. Really interesting. Mahler, the whole symphony basically is encapsulating this idea of the meaninglessness of life or his struggle to find meaning in life. And it's understanding that he can't find it. Like, he seems to reach this resolution at the end, and it's glorious. It's one of the most gorgeous, incredible moments in music. But it's the fact that eventually he gets later in life where he's just despairing again. And he seems to sometimes almost grasp something, and then he doesn't. But all that to say, he said this once, that it's easy to write something interesting, but it's difficult to write something beautiful. Like, I can create something interesting. I can throw all these elements out there and see what happens. Like, I love to experiment, but the more you try to push, like, if you push the boundaries enough till you, like, at a certain point you can lose beauty. Like, okay, here, when we have storms, storms are really neat. I love storms. And it's also the fact that, the next day, the calm after the storm, and how everything, like, the air is fresh and everything is more beautiful because of it, and because of the contrast. Like, we, in this imperfect world, we have the ability to see even more beauty in something because of contrast. So we see, moments of our life, like our best moments, are enhanced by the moments that were the hardest, because we also experience those. So those moments that are the best, or like that, or
100%.
Yeah. And so in music, I think it's in part the same way. Like, you can contrast, but I wonder, like, in heaven, that's when we'll reach perfection. Now, dissonances, there are so many dissonances that are beautiful. Like, I love using dissonances or messing with different ones. So it's definitely not saying that there won't be dissonances. I don't think we're going to be, singing, we'll only have, like, your perfect authentic cadence and only diatonic harmonies all the time. That would be really sad. No. But that is when, like, in heaven is where we're going to experience, beauty in perfection, where there's no need for contrast, there's no need for certain contrast, in that everything's to perfection, so beautiful that our eye doesn't need to see this to enhance this. I'm probably using the wrong words to say that, but basically, there's no need to compare something anymore. Sometimes I guess, like, okay, the reason I can see how messed up and how flawed I am is because I can see Christ. I can see perfection, and I can see, oh my goodness, like, I can't go, 5 minutes without thinking this or intending this or doing this. But Christ lived in perfection. I can't fathom that. Yeah. And that's incredible. But we see that contrast because we actually have this role model. It's not a good term, but we can look to him as, like, he did it, and we can't. But it's the fact that he, earlier we were talking about, like, he on our behalf became sin who knew no sin, that we might be called righteous, that we could accept this free gift, and that before God will be covered by the blood of Christ, that now we're seen as holy. I shouldn't be seen as holy. I'm not. But like, it's the undeserved, and that's where it goes back to the fact that, Christianity, it goes against everything about the flesh. It's so contrary, and that's where it's so right, is because it's so wrong to what our flesh wants, where we're the ones in control, where we're the ones that get the credit, where us this, because now it's just all you. Lord, I need you for this. Lord, I cannot write this on my own. I can't perform this on my own. I can't do this on my own. I'm insufficient
Yeah.
in just myself.
There was so many things that came out of your mouth that I want that I have so many thoughts. And I kind of want to try and walk through my memory chronologically to respond just to a few things. Dude, you just dropped so many stuff.
Sorry,
I know it was awesome, dude. I loved it.
Tangents.
Dude, like this is why we have a podcast. Okay. So one of the first things you said is that sometimes there's a thought that we would wrestle with, of like, oh man, like what if someone's already said this but better? Like what if I'm trying to write, an orchestration, but it's already. Like there's already something similar to it out there. I'm just trying to rise up. And I've just felt over the past few years, this conviction developing inside of me. I mean, dude, I've still yet to release my first song on Spotify, and there's almost this looming shame. I know I could go into it, but I know I'm getting there. But there's this conviction of, even if someone's already said what I'm going to say, like, I have to believe deep down, but they haven't said it like me. They haven't. There's no way. Like, God has not done exactly in their life what God's done in my life. They haven't seen what I've seen. They haven't lived what I've lived. They've, like, even if they went through some type of trauma that's, like, worse, or they've experienced something even on a deeper level, there's just something that God says, yeah, but I want to hear it from you. Like, it's kind of like, let's say Jesus sits down at a coffee shop. And he's just having one-on-one meetings with people just to talk face to face. And someone before you got saved at the same age, started learning violin at the same time. Maybe not that you had a sibling die at a certain age, but let's say even like a similar sibling death, or like a parent said something really mean that like put you into therapy for 3 years. I don't know. but like, if you line up all those things and then you and that person sit down to write a similar song, Jesus is going to look at you with the most meaningful look and say, yeah, but I want to hear it from you because it means something to me. And that to me is like, even if I sound like so-and-so, there's just this push of like, I owe it to God. I quite literally owe it for all the theology that we threw down, for all the, the gospel ramifications. I owe it to God.
It's the fact, like, we're all called to be witnesses, but this is how we're to be used. This is the area we're to be used. That, like, honestly, I feel completely incapable, inadequate. Like, I'm not able to do this, but he is. So that's where, like, this summer I'm planning on just writing it and like,
just go for it.
This is where, like, use me, Lord. Like, I can't do it, but it's the fact that he's given me so much.
Yeah.
And he's given me such a passion. Like, it's so intense at times. It's honestly funny. Like, I love music, like, intensely so. And like, when I say I live for that specific moment of that piece, I do. And I will skip to that one and just, it's perfect.
There's oh my word, I forget the name of the John Bellion song, but it came out 10 years ago, and I was watching the music video the other day, but there's a line in the chorus that's something to the effect of, the reason I get emotional when the chorus of the song hits is because I wasn't the one that wrote it. It was God that gave it to me. And that's why I get emotional. It's because I can't say that I did it. It's like I'm
well, that's why I was like, I say it's an accident, but I mean it when I say it's not an accident. It's the Lord. Like, I can't do that. And I don't, that's what's fun about me. I feel like I like going in not knowing what I'm doing. I like going in to explore these harmonies and to mess with things and see where the Lord takes that. And that I pray that he'll direct me to the right things, and that I'll find some new way to say something. But
Something that you'd brought up, beauty in music. Talk about a debate. I mean, like, especially in Christian circles, because I think there's a lot of implications and ramifications of, like, especially in conservative circles, of, well, we don't like this because it's not beautiful. Well, we don't like this because it's not beautiful.
Oh yeah. Well, what is,
dude? It's
like, and that's the hard thing, because so much, like, so much is related, like, it's subjective, and it's definitely, it depends on the individual, and that's a very big thing. Like, I still do wonder if there's some sort of absolute truth in music that's like, if you go beyond this point, what is it? But like, say in church, like, okay, I grew up in maybe more, I guess, a contemporary setting, and now I play at a church that's more traditional than campus church, but we have a drum set. And I truly believe, like, what's the heart of the player? And like, okay, we all have preferences, and it's important to not confuse preference and tradition, like tradition for tradition's sake. We don't want to confuse preference for, like, truth. Like, okay, maybe this church, we have the tradition of doing things this way, or we just prefer not doing it. So then say that as that, but don't say it as this is just wrong, or it's like scripture. Like, we don't worship like the way they worshiped, man, well, at least here we don't, with all the dancing and the tambourines and all that stuff. And we don't have the same instruments, but gradually, the way we worship has progressed over time, and the instruments that we use, and the languages that we speak, and the music, and like hymns, contemporary Christian songs. The important thing is it doctrinally sound? Is it truth? Like, there are plenty of hymns, there are plenty of contemporary songs that don't align with scripture. And it's everything, like, when I'm reading scripture, I don't need a filter. I don't need to filter out the truth from scripture. I can just read it. That's a great thing about truth. Yeah, but with anything like pastor sermons, in Bible studies, in with hymns,
like, you need
and
a constant filter with people.
You need to you filter it out, and that's what you'd like. I pray that the Lord gives me discernment, and because I am in the Word, that He'll help me recognize that which is true. Good report.
Yeah. There's been some songs I've heard before that aren't Christian songs, and might be in a variety of genres, and I'll listen to the music and almost put the lyrics aside, and I'll think to myself, wow, this conveys something powerful that really relates to some place my mind goes to in scripture. And I think, man, like, yeah, I mean, what if I did swap out lyrics? Like, is that still valid? Mm-hmm. And you can have a person write an orchestration with the wrong heart.
Oh yeah.
And
that's the interesting thing, though, because you get into interesting things like the Lord uses people who intended things completely opposite. Like, literally, like, people that were in, like, okay, if some man gives an offering, or he gives to the church, but all this was for the wrong reasons. It was done for maybe really bad reasons, but the Lord uses that. Isn't that, like, great? Because again, He uses imperfect people with wrong intentions, and He works it into His perfect plan because He is sovereign. Like, and like that's where it's like, I can't really get in the way much, because the Lord is going to find a way, and we can't. Granted, I can be used of Him, and I want to be used of Him.
Yeah.
But we can't put God in a box, because, like, anytime we, like, I don't want to think that, like, I'm not that important, but He is, and because He's important, if I work for Him, something of that could be used, or would have value because it's for Him, and that's the lasting value, that kind of thing. Like, we have purpose. Like
Yeah.
that's an incredible thing. Like some people say, oh yeah, I have a purpose. Like it's to do this or to achieve this or this. It's like, you know, I have an eternal purpose, and it's gonna last.
Yeah.
Like, and it's all just because of him.
Okay, I want to throw a thought at you, and I think there's a lot of tangents we could go from it.
Mhm.
I wonder if one of the core facets of truth that relates to a revolving element of beauty, that was a big word salad, but it's this word, resolution.
Mm.
Because I think that when you look at scripture, there's a lot of things that aren't beautiful, but there's a lot of tug and pull between conflict and resolution. So like take it like this. Fall of man, sin. God comes in and says, I have a plan, foreshadow, resolution.
Mhm.
You have Joseph, there's a lot of evil, resolution.
Mhm.
Noah, conflict, resolution. All like conflict, resolution. And of course, the epitome of all, take the cross. Okay. You look at a naked pulp of a meat figure on a tree, and that's what it was. And there is no way you would have looked at that and the word that went through your mind would have been beautiful. It would have been the absolute furthest thing from your mind. It wasn't beautiful. But when Mary went to the garden and Jesus said her name, there was something about that moment that for millennia to come, the word beauty was there. There was a resolution. And then Christ ascends up, and I'll have to finish out this train of thought. Christ ascends, and then, you know, insert Nero, insert Pentecost. Okay, there's like, I mean, you could go on with the, that, but let's go to music. Okay, so with a genre, I think that there's some elements of some genres that lean so far to one end but not the other. And so, okay, let's go to this word of like truth and beauty. Okay, truth, I really feel that it's such a biblical pattern. I think that you could associate it with the word truth. Okay. So if you have a contemporary song that just only focuses on the conflict, but doesn't even touch on the resolution, can I look at that song and say, oh yeah, that follows biblical pattern? And what if that's also a gauge on how much God maybe even worked in their heart? Like, sure, God might be working in their heart, but I mean, can't they even look to the Bible that there will be a resolution? And if they don't, maybe that's a tell. Really. Or let's say it this way. So one of the critiques of, let's say Christian rap, one of the critiques would be, oh yeah, well, it seems like the genre is associated with a lot of anger and too much energy. Okay, well, let's associate that with the word conflict. Okay, but there is tug and pull even within the genre where there's breakdowns and choruses that really do like point to a resolution of like, yeah, but God, you are awesome, you are awesome, you are awesome, you are awesome. And could it be as powerful if they didn't lean as far into the conflict? And that's an overgeneralization of the genre. But I almost wonder, even with like, let's take an orchestration. Okay. You said, oh, like, I love when there's these, diatonic and like, there's these cluster chords that just, but there's a piece of you that knows, but that has to resolve eventually. Right. Like it's leading somewhere.
Like, the most beautiful pieces to me are ones that just build this tension, and there's like beautiful dissonances that just, like, I'll real quick go. Okay, the Largo movement of New World Symphony. It's so famous. That English horn solo. It is just, will always be a staple on earth for, like, just a well-crafted, poignant piece of music. And what's really neat is that melody line doesn't use many notes, and it is so simple, and it's based on a spiritual, actually. That's what's interesting. But what's interesting is this is the simplicity where it's a mastered simplicity. There's not a ton going on. But what it says is just perfect. Like sometimes you encounter moments in music that are like, wow, like that's exactly how is like that's the best it could be said. That was just perfect. Perfect for here. And that's where I imagine that there has to be some distinction between music here and there. Just because
like eternity.
Yeah, like before the fall, what did we have to contrast? We had fellowship with God. There was perfection. There was beauty, holiness, righteousness. And then the fall brings death and suffering and pain and loss and grief and sadness, and darkness and sin, and now we have this contrast where yes, now we can remind people of like there's this, and we point them to Christ, like Christ. That's where like we're always taking this. Like I love the song "Were It Not for Grace," by Larnell Harris. Like, were it not for grace,
Lord, I know where I'd be.
Yeah, wandering down some
wandering road to nowhere. Yeah,
with my salvation up to me. I know how that would go. The battles I would face, forever running, but losing the race, were it not for grace.
Were it not for grace.
Which is just again bringing to mind our insufficiency. But and then sure. Like I don't know if you know the song "Your Grace Still Amazes Me." Yeah, like just when we just stand in awe for a minute, like some of those moments of silence where you just think about who he is and why would he do that, but he did. And it's that remembering our purpose, like our ultimate purpose, and that's the driving factor. And that like we're striving, or we can't attain perfection here. But you know, we're those contrasts we can compare between, you know, the suffering and the loss and the hurt, to the hope and the redemption and salvation in Christ, and true lasting eternal joy and peace in him. And I can imagine, you know, when he says, you know, and you know, there'll be no crying, no tears anymore, you know, no sadness, no pain. The former things, you know, they're passed away. Behold, I'm making all things new. That'll be incredible.
Yeah. Isaiah, we
could go on a lot of tangents.
We really could. Wow, this was a really neat episode. I feel like we covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we did.
Wow.
A lot of tangents. It was great.
A lot of changes. Yeah. Wait, did you say changes?
Tangents.
A lot of tangents.
Yeah.
A lot of tangents.
But a lot of changes have
a lot of changes have.
Yeah.
Like a lot can happen in a year and a half.
It really
because it's been crazy. A year and a half.
Yeah. That's crazy to think about.
I know. Yeah, it's weird to think like a year and a half from now there could be even more, like way more changes.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of potential.
Well, Isaiah, it was a pleasure
Yes. It
to
really
have
was.
you
Thank you for
on this podcast.
having me again.
Yeah, maybe the next time you come, it'll be like twice as much lighting and
Yeah.
and it'll be like ramped up twice.
Right.
Yeah. But no, it really was a pleasure. I know that God's
Yeah.
going to do a lot with you. And so I'm just so grateful we can have milestones like this that years down the road, you or I could listen to it, or our kids, or anything else. But no, it's been a real honor.
Yeah,
So,
for me as well. I really appreciate
well,
it.
guys, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope it's just as much a blessing to you guys. And I'll catch you on the next. Bye.